Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 1231, Untitled. The monk couldn't have anticipated this would happen. Although the 10 fiery threads didn't penetrate the golden projection, red light flashed, turning themselves into bulky fire chains. Like a bolt of lightning, they instantly coiled around the projection and firmly trapped them. When the monk saw this, he was stunned for a moment, then raising his hand and flicking in the air without any delay. A white sword light shot out from its tip and directly struck at the fiery chains. A beautiful ring sounded as red and white light clashed together. The sword light only left a pea-sized crack on the dense chains. The silver-robed monk grew sullen at the sight. When he saw the tricolored fire raven and the purple flame wave race forward, the monk stomped on the white lotus below him, letting out a thunderous dragon's roar and solemnly parting his arms outward. The huge golden projection seemed to sense the monk's anxiousness and radiated blinding golden light from its body. Its already gigantic size swelled and it grew until it was over 25 meters tall, pulling on the fire chains until it was nearly brought to the point of destruction. The monk's heart sank by what he saw next. The fire chains grew alongside projection and didn't suffer the slightest strain. The monk formed an incantation gesture and the golden projection abruptly shrunk in size, yet the fire chains followed the transformation, remaining tightly wound around it. In the following moment, the silver-robed monk's expression massively changed as well. When he saw the 3-colored flame raven arrive near it as it remained defenseless, he tossed the jade bottle into the air. The silver bottle spun once in the air before directly charging at the flame raven with its mouth pointed at it. Then, it brightly glowed silver and religious chants echoed from it, followed by a large wave of 7-colored Buddhist light directly wrapping around the oncoming flame raven. The raven cried out and spread out its wings, evading it and arriving right above the silver-robed monk. But soon, the light caught the raven and Buddhist light brightly shined, swiveling around the raven. With the raven wrapped tightly, it drew it back into the bottle. It seemed the light was the raven's natural enemy. The monk's expression relaxed for a moment, then pointing at the bottle in the air. The bottle trembled and spouted out another mist of Buddhist light. This time, it was aiming at the wave of purple flame trailing after the flame raven. It appeared he intended on using this treasure to deal with both attacks. But at that moment, Han Li uttered, "Burst." The small silver bottle floating in the air violently shook and instantly warped in shape, its surface bending unevenly as its silver light slowly flashed. Muffled booms sounded from it, only growing louder by the second. Not good. The silver-robed monk swept his spiritual sense past the silver bottle and discovered something astonishing. Soon after, the white lotus underneath him blurred and he disappeared. All that was left behind was the meter-large lotus slowly turning in the air and the restrained golden projection. At the same time the monk vanished, the small silver bottle flickered and let out a thunderous explosion. A 3-colored halo burst out from the silver bottle, destroying it in its entirety. Talisman characters wandered in the air as the halo spread several times its size, completely submerging the white lotus and the golden projection. The golden projection remained bound by the chains, unable to move a single inch. Although the golden projection was able to somewhat withstand the flames for just a moment, it quickly collapsed like foam. As for the lotus, it was instantly vaporized. In an area over 100 meters away, white light flashed, followed by the appearance of the silver-robed monk. His expression abruptly turned deathly pale in the exact moment the golden projection collapsed, and he coughed up some blood essence. At the same time, the golden color of his flesh greatly dimmed, clearly displaying his loss of vitality. It appeared the bond he shared with that projection was much like that of a bonded magic treasure, linked to his blood and soul. Han Li expressionlessly cast a spell seal and the roiling wave of purple flames suddenly transformed. In just a second, it took the form of a python over 30 meters long with a white pearl in its jaw and pounced towards the monk. Before it even arrived in front of the monk, it stirred up icy gales and plummeted the temperatures nearby as if one suddenly found themselves in a snowstorm. White light flashed from below monk, producing another lotus as the one he stood in before. His legs remained still, but the lotus twirled several times and he reappeared 30 meters away. He let out a forced laugh and said, "Please stop. I won't compare my skills with you further. I concede defeat against fellow Daoist Han's amazing abilities." After the monk took the initiative to admit defeat in their battle, he looked in the direction of the broken silver bottle with a trace of pity. The bottle was a top-grade Buddhist treasure that he acquired with much difficulty. He felt deeply depressed that it was destroyed in a spar and was unwilling to continue the fight. Although both parties hadn't displayed their full powers, Han Li's abilities were superior, and the monk suffered a few injuries as well. When Han Li heard this, his gaze flickered and he waved his hand in the distance. The python of purple flame suddenly froze and burned up into purple smoke. As for the white pearl remained floating in the air, Han Li commanded it to return to him along with the fire chains. The two treasures flickered and vanished after entering Han Li's body. Han Li saluted the monk and calmly said, "You went easy on me," before dropping to the ground. Those at the gate looked upon Han Li with reverence. Although the two were both grand cultivators, Han Li was able to easily defeat Buddhist monk Yuan Ji. It was likely Can Ku would share a similar result. The young man, monk Yang Zhu, met Han Li's eyes and couldn't help but wear an odd expression. His previous calm was gone. Although the silver-robed monk was no match for Han Li, the hidden fortunate pavilion master smiled openly and took the initiative to be friendly. "Your fight truly opened my horizons. I hope to one day reach your heights. Since you've won, I will be discreet about this. I'll send someone to retrieve the miniature space refinement technique." "Sorry for the trouble, Pavilion Lord." Han Li replied with a faint smile. Can Ku repeatedly replied, "Of course," and immediately took out a command token and handed it to a core formation behind him. He carefully gave his orders. The cultivator immediately received the token with both hands and hastily departed below. Apart from the hidden fortunate hall, there were several other towering pavilions in the air. They were all built grandly. Previously, some people were leaving and entering them, but due to the recent battle between Han Li and the silver-robed monk, no one else appeared from them. Carrying the command token, the core formation cultivator disappeared into one of the buildings below. At that moment, the silver-robed monk took a calming breath and descended to the ground. He took out a white medicine bottle and tossed a fire-red medicine pill into his mouth. "Master Yuan Ji, are you well?" Han Li looked over and asked. Yuan Ji looked over at Han Li and casually smiled at him as if he didn't mind the injuries Han Li inflicted on him. He aloofly answered, "I'm fine. With medicine pills, I'll only need several months to recover. But I must say that fan of yours is no ordinary treasure. Even top-grade magic treasures couldn't damage my golden projection as much as your fan, and I wasn't able to resist it in the slightest. It should be a spirit treasure replica, but not a genuine article. The master is quite observant. My fan is indeed a spirit treasure replica." Han Li answered with a chuckle. When the silver-robed monk heard this, a faint smile appeared on his indifferent face. But just as he thought to say something, Can Ku interjected. The fat old man rubbed his hands together and chuckled. "Fellow Taoists, we may as well continue our discussion inside the hall. I happened to acquire a bottle of the Crossing Dragon's Roar. It is said that when ordinary cultivators take a drink of it, it can accomplish about a month of dedicated cultivation. More importantly, the flavor is said to be exquisite beyond description. How about we taste it together?" At that moment, he no longer appeared to be a pavilion lord, but rather a hospitable old man of humble origins. "The Crossing Dragon's Roar? I have heard of that wine's name. It is said to be created from several rare fruits that have long been extinct from the mortal world. The wine is fragrant beyond all others. Fellow Daoist, please don't be surprised. Although I hail from a Buddhist sect, I will find it hard to deny something of this value." Yuan Ji smiled upon seeing Han Li's amazement and teasingly replied, "In the past, fellow Daoist Can Ku became a guest elder of our sect by enticing him with tens of ancient spirit wines. But don't think he is a base monk. He respects all the other commandments." His tone was friendly. When Han Li heard this, his heart stirred and he silently smiled. Then, the party entered the main hall. Chapter 1232, Halfway Interception. Someplace high in the air, an azure light slowly moved forward. Past the faint cover of light was a smiling youth that fiddled with a faint red jade slip in his hand. This person was Han Li, who just left the hidden Fortunate Hall not long ago. He held a jade slip in hand that contained the secret technique to refine a compressed miniature space. I didn't expect that something as famous as a miniature space would have such a simple refinement technique. Most of the materials needed for it are also quite simple. If that was the case, refining it should be quite easy, Han Li muttered to himself as he flew. You can call that a miniature space? I only see it as a method of creating a fixed teleportation formation to a spatial tear. True compressed spaces are treasures that can be carried on hand and can always be entered as will. A boy's voice lazily sounded in Han Li's ear. Han Li shook his head. Although fellow Daoist's words are reasonable, it isn't possible to create such a treasure with the abilities of the mortal world's cultivators. Even your all-encompassing pouch and the original Blackwind flag only possess minor spatial abilities, nothing like the miniature spaces that you speak of. The boy replied with a smile, "That is reasonable. To the best of my knowledge, I only know several characters that own a true miniature space, each of them a top-grade existence in the spirit realm. Otherwise, others would have seized these treasures from them. Since you acquired the refinement technique for the compressed space, will you now head to Yin Sifting Sect and acquire the Ghost Sifting Banners? Fellow Daoist, will you boldly face their entire sect?" "Of course I won't," Han Li shook his head. "Even if the Yin Sifting Sect only has one grand cultivator, they are still one of the 10 great Devil Dao sects. Who could know what fearsome restrictions they've placed inside their sect, or what other killing measures they have in place? The Yin Sifting Sect has an ancient legacy. I don't plan on risking my life over this." "Then you mean?" The boy's curiosity was piqued. "It's quite simple. To take out evil, I must first take out their king. After I deal with the Yin Sifting Sect master, I'll finish off the rest of the nascent soul elders of the sect. Furthermore, we made inquiries about them before. Over these past few years, there are many Devil Dao sects that have been eyeing their position in the 10 great sects. This Yin Sifting Sect master has also been leaving the sect often. We'll only need to wait for an opportunity to kill him outside of the Fangmang Mountains. Without a grand cultivator standing guard, the restrictions at the Yin Sifting Sect will be particularly powerful, but that isn't anything that I'll have to worry about too much. However, before I take action, I'd best start on other objectives. After all, I'll have to finish the matter quickly after I start. If a deity transformation cultivator finds out to discover me and decides to interfere, it will be greatly troublesome." Han Li's voice turned sullen. The boy smiled. "That is so. The grand cultivators of the mortal realm can't take actions as they wish. If you intended on destroying such a large sect, I fear one of those fellows won't be able to sit still." This time, Han Li didn't reply. He simply wore a cold smile. After he withdrew the jade slip from his hand, his speed increased several times and he disappeared from the nearby skies in the blink of an eye. Many years passed. A massacre was occurring in a nameless mountain range bordering the Feng province and Han County. It consisted of 6 black-robed cultivators commanding over 1,000 armored refined corpses to surround and kill several tens of differently dressed cultivators. The armored corpses weren't weak, and with the addition of the black-robed cultivators commanding them, their corpse chi soared. In only the time it took to finish a meal, the corpses easily devoured the party of cultivators apart from the most powerful core formation cultivators of the group. These survivors felt that they would soon face their deaths as well. But at that moment, a shrieking whistle sounded from the distant sky, the sound seemingly capable of spreading through all of the 9 heavens. When the cultivators in this battle heard this, they felt their ears ache until they only heard loud ringing. When the black-robed cultivators heard this, their expressions massively changed. As for the cultivators that were surrounded, joy beamed from faces. Spiritual light flashed from the distant, followed by the faint sounds of thunder. An emerald-green acre-large cloud streaked over to them. At its incredible speed, it traveled over 300 meters in the blink of an eye to where the cultivators were fighting. At that moment, a cold voice sounded from the air. Following a black flash, a vague silhouette strangely warped into view. I was wondering who thought to personally bring a force to attack my sect. It turned out to be the Bloodbone sect's fellow Daoist Bai. Soon after, this person waved his sleeves in a dance, sweeping flashes of silver light to cut the oncoming green cloud. Old Devil Fang! A cry of surprise was shouted from the devilish cloud, and it immediately changed direction to flee. Humph! Since you've arrived at the border of the sect, there is no need for you to leave. Following an icy snort, the grey light chased after the cloud, the grey light traveling several times faster as its color turned pitch black. In a short amount of time, they revealed over 100 kilometers in their pursuit and they disappeared from the horizon. When the black-robed cultivators saw this, they regained their calm and commanded the armored corpses to resume their attacks with increased intensity. As for the surrounded cultivators, their hopeful expressions were replaced with despair after they saw what happened. Despite this, they strived their hardest, managing to kill many armored corpses before they were eventually wiped out. Afterwards, the black-robed cultivators released black pouches which absorbed the armored corpses into them. But they didn't immediately depart. Rather, they whispered among each other as they looked to the distant sky. After some time passed, the light flashed from the sky and a black streak was flying back in their direction. The black-robed cultivator immediately stopped talking. They split into two rows, standing at attention. Black light flashed in front of them to reveal a silhouette wrapped in black chi. We pay our respects to the sect master. These black-robed cultivators grandly saluted with reverent expression. The silhouette in the black chi asked, "Have those from the Bloodbone sect been wiped out?" A lanky old man took several steps forward and solemnly answered, "Please be at ease, sect master. Of the 73 Bloodbone sect members that entered, all are dead. Not one escaped." The silhouette coldly said, "The flesh body of that Bloodbone sect elder Bai Hua has also been destroyed. Only his nascent soul escaped me. After this, I presume that the Bloodbone sect won't dare to launch another sect on me. Humph! Were it not for our lacking numbers, I would have sent our sect to eliminate them." The other black-robed cultivators didn't dare to speak and simply stood there awaiting further orders. After muttering to himself for a long while more, the silhouette eventually commanded, "There is nothing else to do here for the time being. First, return to the sect. I have other matters I must deal here with myself. I'll return later. As you command." The black-robed cultivators didn't dare to raise any opposition and all acknowledged his orders. Afterwards, they took off in streaks of various colored light, cleanly departing from the area. Now, all that remained in the area was silhouette wrapped in black chi. He looked in the distance and remained motionless in place. After an unknown amount of time passed, he eventually said, "Isn't it about time for you to appear after watching so much? Could it be that you wish for me to force you to appear?" Once he said that with a hostile tone, he looked around to a nearby area with seemingly no one there. In a flash of azure light, a youth in azure robes appeared with his hands behind his back. "Oh! It seems you are deserving of your position as the yin-sifting sect master to have discovered me. But why would you reveal me after you sent off your disciples? Could it be you don't wish to involve them?" The youth was Han Li. His objective was the silhouette in the black chi, the yin-sifting sect master Fang. To tell the truth, to intercept the sect master, he watched over the Fangmong mountain range for at least half a year. Now that an opportunity finally arose, he stealthily followed after him. "It's you." When the sect master Fang saw Han Li's face, his body trembled and he fiercely glared at him. "So it appears sect master Fang recognizes me." Han Li's face remained indifferent. "So you've managed to enter late nascent soul stage. Did you come here intending on killing me?" The black chi surrounding the sect master vanished to reveal a man in his late 20s with an extremely pale complexion. A green light faintly glinted from his eyes. "That's right. Since I'm here, only one of us will be leaving this place." Han Li spoke leisurely as if he were only having a chat with a friend. When the yin-sifting sect master heard Han Li's words, his expression changed several times, but eventually, green light flashed from his eyes as he raised his head in wild laughter. "Good. Very good. Even if you didn't come seek me out, I eventually plan to hunt you down in the heavenly south. They say Old Devil Qian and North Night Palace's Master Arctic Dragon have died by your hand. To tell the truth, I don't believe those rumors, so your trip here to seek your own death is something I could only wish for. I will be sure to avenge the deaths of my wife and our sect elders." Soon after, his figure spun and black chi appeared around him. In the blink of an eye, he was completely engulfed and ghostly wails yelled around him. Several tall figures strangely appeared within the chi. Chapter 1233, Slaying a Great Cultivator. Even though the black chi was extremely dense, Han Li was still able to identify the devilish being within the black chi. They consisted of 3 tall and burly corpses in suits of black armor. One was wielding a shimmering yellow short halberd, the other was wielding a green spear, and the final one had a shimmering silver mace hoisted up on its shoulder. The 3 corpses all had sharp fangs and green light dancing within their eyes. All of them seemed to possess nascent soul stage power, and particularly worthy of note was that corpse with the mace hoisted up on its shoulder. The devilish chi emanating from its body was especially dense, suggesting that it was already at the mid-nascent soul stage. Han Li was slightly surprised by this development, but he wasn't fearful in the slightest as he summoned a small black vial before making a hand seal. 5 bursts of grayish-white light erupted from within the vial before transforming into 5 humanoid skeletons. As soon as they emerged, they began to let loose bursts of unsettling cackling. At the same time, an astonishing amount of grayish-white devilish chi began to emanate from their bodies, giving them a very sinister appearance. Unbroken sank devils. The yin-sifting sect master's heart sank upon seeing this. He and old devil Qian had been martial brothers for many years, so he was obviously able to immediately identify that these were his unbroken sank devils. Just as bewilderment was surging through his heart, pairs of bone sabers appeared in the hands of the 5 devils at Han Li's behest, and those sabers came crashing down viciously without any hesitation. As things currently were, the yin-sifting sect master had no time for hesitation. He could only grit his teeth as the 3 armor-clad corpses within the black chi rushed out toward the 5 devils. Meanwhile, he rustled his sleeve to produce a black bead, then flipped over his other hand to summon a veil-like yellow object. However, before the yin-sifting sect master had a chance to use these 2 treasures, the 3 corpses had already clashed with the 5 devils. Just as they were about to come into contact with one another, the 3 armor-clad corpses opened their mouths to expel 3 bursts of putrid green mist. This was the corpse poison that had been accumulating within their guts for countless years. If a normal cultivator were to be struck by this poison, they would most likely lose most of their cultivation base if not be killed on the spot. However, the 5 devils weren't humans, and they saw no need to evade these bursts of green corpse poison. Instead, they also opened their mouths to blast forth bursts of glacial flames of different colors. This wasn't a casual sparring match. Han Li was intent on killing this yin-sifting sect master. As such, he immediately unleashed his 5 glacial flames, which had been cultivated to the height of their powers. The 5 different colored glacial flames intertwined with one another, creating a 5-colored sea of fire that surged toward the 3 corpses. Not only did the sea of flames completely vanquish the corpse poison, they went on to engulf the 3 oncoming corpses as well. The fearsome armored corpses immediately slowed down significantly amid the 5-colored sea of flames. However, these corpses weren't completely pushovers. Even though they seemed to be moving at less than a tenth of their original speed, they were able to expel inky black corpse chi from their bodies to keep the glacial flames at bay, thereby preventing them from being inundated right away. The 5 devils refrained from charging ahead upon seeing this. Instead, they retreated to several feet away while continuing to blast forth streams of glacial flames, thus ensuring that the 3 corpses remained trapped within the sea of flames. The yin-sifting sect master's expression darkened significantly upon seeing this. These 3 armored corpse monarchs had been painstakingly nurtured by him for centuries, and all of them possessed extremely powerful bodies and abilities. Never would he have thought that they would be nullified so easily by the unbroken sank devils, to the extent that they weren't even able to unleash a single one of their abilities. Just what kind of flames were being blasted out of the mouths of the 5 devils? These 5 devils were clearly the same ones that old devil Qian had refined, so how had they managed to gain such extraordinary abilities after being taken by Han Li? A sense of foreboding welled up in the yin-sifting sect master's heart as his mind scrambled for answers. At the same time, he immediately tossed his 2 treasures into the air without any hesitation. The yellow veil-like treasures rotated in the air before instantly transforming into a massive net that was several hundred feet in size. The net seemed to have obscured the entire sky, and Han Li, as well as the unbroken Sanct Devils, were all under its scope. Meanwhile, the black ball flew slowly through the air in a completely mundane manner, flying behind the net in hot pursuit. Han Li's brows furrowed as he immediately blasted a small azure cauldron out of his mouth. He laid a hand onto the cauldron and a plume of azure threads shot forth from within amid a flash of spiritual light, creating a vast expanse of azure light that kept the massive net at bay, preventing it from descending any further. At the same time, the Triflame fan and the 8-spirit ruler appeared in his hands, and he waved the latter gently through the air. A silver lotus flower immediately appeared beneath the black ball, and before the latter even had a chance to reveal its powers, it was completely immobilized on the spot, unable to advance even an inch further. Han Li didn't know what that ball was, but a shiver ran down his spine for some reason when he saw it flying toward him. As such, he immediately unleashed his 8-spirit ruler to trap that ball, and only then did he heave an internal sigh of relief. The yin-sifting sect master hurriedly tried to use his spiritual sense to withdraw the black ball upon seeing this, but it seemed to have been frozen in mid-air and completely failed to react. The old devil was struck by the urge to cuss out loud. This ball was no ordinary treasure, and he had intended to catch Han Li by surprise with it in order to bring him down in one fell swoop. However, he didn't think that Han Li's instincts would be so sharp. Not only was he not allowing the ball to approach him, he had also completely immobilized it. As such, the old devil's plan had completely fallen through. Right at this moment, Han Li also sprang into action. A loud thunderclap rang out as a pair of azure and white wings appeared on his back. He gently flapped those wings before disappearing soundlessly on the spot with his Triflame fan held tightly in his grasp. The yin-sifting sect master's heart jolted upon seeing this. He hurriedly made a hand seal to summon the black chi around him back to his body, creating a suit of inky black armor in the blink of an eye. He then let loose a low roar as resounding booms erupted all over his body. Countless arcs of blue lightning surfaced over his armor, making it appear as if countless shimmering blue snakes were roaming over his suit of armor, creating an extremely formidable sight to behold. Right at this moment, spatial fluctuations appeared behind him, following which a humanoid figure appeared, seemingly out of thin air. The yin-sifting sect master didn't turn around, but he seemed to have anticipated this in advance as he abruptly made a hand seal. A burst of black light immediately shot forth from his back, appeared above the humanoid figure's head in a flash before crashing down with ferocious might. It was an inky black flying sword that was around a foot in length. A loud clang erupted as the humanoid figure raised both of its hands. 2 silver longswords were held within his grasp, and he used them to swat the flying sword away. Only then did the yin-sifting sect master turn around with a cold smile on his face. However, his smile immediately stiffened at the sight of the humanoid figure behind him. Even though the humanoid figure was completely identical in appearance to Han Li, there wasn't even a single trace of vitality in its body. It was like an inanimate object. Just he was about to assess this Han Li with his spiritual sense, an arc of azure light flashed in the air overhead and the true Han Li emerged. He then immediately swept his Triflame fan downward without any hesitation, sending a pillar of 3 colored flames hurtling down below. Even though this was the first time the yin-sifting sect master had seen this fan, the terrifying fire attribute spiritual power imbued within it alerted him to the fact that it was not to be taken lightly. He bent his knees and his legs were like coiled springs, launching him backward in retreat at an astonishing speed. Not only that, but during his retreat, he pointed a finger toward Han Li from afar. The countless blue lightning snakes roaming over its body shot forth in a flash, hurtling toward Han Li amid a burst of explosive thunderclaps. He then opened his mouth to blast forth an extremely smooth jade panel, which swelled drastically as it flew through the air. At the same time, he flipped over his other hand to summon a sharp golden spike. He hurled the spike viciously through the air, and it only flashed twice before it was upon Han Li, attempting to pierce through his body at an incredible speed. A normal nascent soul cultivator definitely wouldn't be able to evade such a rapid attack, but after cultivating the 9 Gale transformations, Han Li was able to twist his body to the side in an impossible angle as if he had no bones, thereby allowing him to easily evade the golden spike as it flew past him several feet away. At this point, the Yin Sifting Sect Master was over 200 feet away from Han Li, and he was looking on at Han Li's contortion skills with astonishment in his eyes. After Han Li's body returned to normal, he appraised his opponent with a cold expression before suddenly clasping his hands behind his back and letting loose a cold harumph. The Yin Sifting Sect Master was initially a little perplexed by Han Li's actions, but as soon as his cold harumph reached his ears, he felt as if a sharp spike had been driven into his brain. The excruciating pain caught him completely off guard, and he doubled over with his hands clawing at his own head as his expression was twisted to the extreme. This was the Spirit Stun Thorn secret technique that had been developed by the Monarch of Soul Divergence. Han Li had already reached the final layer of the Great Development Technique, and his cultivation base was at the pinnacle of late nascent soul stage, so this Spirit Stun Thorn attack was virtually as powerful as it possibly could be. This was most likely what the Monarch of Soul Divergence would have been capable of at the height of his powers. However, despite how powerful this secret technique, it was only effective when used in conjunction with the element of surprise. If a cultivator were aware of this secret technique beforehand, they would only have to use their powerful spiritual sense to guard their heads, and the technique would prove to be nowhere near as effective. Furthermore, the effect that this technique had on a late nascent soul cultivator was quite short. Under normal circumstances, a great cultivator would be able to forcibly repress this pain and return to their senses in about 2 or 3 seconds. However, what was rather strange was that after unleashing his Spirit Stun Thorn, Han Li remained standing on the spot, looking at the Yin Sifting Sect Master as if he were appraising a dead man. The Yin Sifting Sect Master recovered even more quickly from the Spirit Stun Thorn than Han Li had anticipated, returning to his senses virtually in the blink of an eye before an expression of fury appeared on his face. Right at this moment, he was suddenly struck by the sense that something was amiss, and he hurriedly turned around, but it was already too late. A cold sensation glanced past his throat as a black streak of light circled around his neck, following which his head came tumbling down onto the ground. Chapter 1234. Plotting against the Yin Sifting Sect. That streak of black light was naturally none other than the Devil Essence Dagger. Even though this dagger was extremely powerful and had exceptional concealment properties, a great cultivator would always be able to sense it at such close quarters. As such, Han Li used the Spirit Stun Thorn first, forcing the Yin Sifting Sect Master to reflexively withdraw his spiritual sense back into his body as a result of the excruciating pain. The Devil Essence Dagger was then able to take advantage of this opportunity, flying around to behind its target before easily slicing off his head. It could be said that victory was decided in an instant. Otherwise, even though Han Li was confident in his ability to bring down his opponent, it would take quite a long time and require a lot of effort. The Yin Sifting Sect Master was overly confident in the suit of armor that he was wearing, and never would he have thought that Han Li would possess a treasure like the Devil Essence Dagger, which could completely disregard devilish chi. As a result, his armor proved to be completely ineffective, and he was insta-killed on the spot. Immediately following the Yin Sifting Sect Master's decapitation, Han Li suddenly spread his thunderstorm wings and disappeared as an arc of azure lightning. In the next instant, Han Li appeared in the air above the headless body. However, right at this moment, the headless body suddenly began to expand drastically before exploding violently, sending a burst of blood mist hurtling toward Han Li. Han Li was given a massive fright and immediately raised both hands at once. 2 thick arcs of golden lightning immediately shot forth amid a resounding thunderclap, splitting up to form a large golden net before retaliating against the crimson mist. This crimson mist had to be some kind of sinister secret technique that allowed a cultivator to use its body as a weapon, but the divine Devilbane lightning just so happened to be able to completely nullify it. As such, as soon as the two clashed, the oncoming cloud of crimson mist was immediately vanquished amid flashes of golden light. However, a tiny black humanoid figure had taken advantage of this opportunity to flee into the distance. This miniature humanoid figure was naturally none other than the Yin Sifting Sect Master's nascent soul. It sped to over 300 feet away in the blink of an eye, then began to unleash a teleportation technique. After 2 flashes in quick succession, it appeared a further several hundred feet away, thereby taking it to over 1,000 feet away from Han Li, and it appeared that it was going to escape. Han Li's expression darkened upon seeing this before a cold smile appeared on his face. A loud thunderclap suddenly rang out behind him as two thick bolts of azure and white lightning surfaced on both of his wings at the same time. Immediately thereafter, balls of lightning appeared behind him before revolving around his wings. He flapped his thunderstorm wings, and all of the balls of lightning exploded at once, injecting arcs of azure and white lightning into his wings. Han Li transformed into an arc of lightning and disappeared amid another resounding thunderclap. In the next instant, he had appeared 300 feet away before abruptly vanishing once again amid another thunderclap. On the next occasion, the arc of lightning appeared several hundred feet away, and it was close to catching up to the fleeing nascent soul. The yin-sifting sect master turned around just in time to witness Han Li unleashing his extraordinary movement technique, and a surge of panic immediately ran through his heart. He knew that he couldn't afford to conserve his power any longer as he made a hand seal, and his nascent soul disappeared as a streak of crimson light, attempting to flee by using his teleportation technique in quick succession. At this moment, Han Li appeared around 400 feet behind the nascent soul, and he harumphed coldly upon seeing this. A thin gash appeared on his glabella, following which black light flashed and an inky black eyeball surfaced. This was none other than Han Li's Law Destruction Eye. As soon as the eye appeared, a flash of black light shot forth from within, disappearing into a certain spot in the air. Immediately thereafter, a loud explosion erupted as the nascent soul stumbled out of empty space amid a flash of black light, looking as if its teleportation technique had been forcibly cut off midway. The nascent soul wore a panicked expression of incredulity, as if it were yet to come to terms with the fact that Han Li had a method to foil its teleportation technique. It gritted its teeth and disappeared again after making a hand seal. Han Li's brows furrowed as his expression completely darkened. Another burst of black light was blasted out of his Law Destruction Eye, and he flapped his wings as he disappeared as an arc of azure lightning. As such, when the nascent soul was forced to reveal itself again, Han Li was able to appear just over 100 feet away from it. The nascent soul was shocked to see this, and it immediately raised its hands to send several green threads hurtling toward Han Li. Han Li also raised a hand to summon several fiery threads, which were sent flying through the air. As soon as the threads clashed, the green threads revealed their true forms to be hair-thin green flying needles. Meanwhile, the nascent soul tried to take advantage of this opportunity to flee again. However, Han Li was already prepared on this occasion. He swept his sleeve through the air in an expressionless manner as he blasted forth an arc of golden lightning, which then disappeared on the spot. In the next instant, a loud thunderclap erupted up ahead, and the yin-sifting sect master's nascent soul let loose a cry of anguish before clasping its hands over its chest. A tiny golden sword that was several inches in length was protruding from its chest, but it didn't seem to have completely punctured the nascent soul's body. However, the arcs of lightning emanating from the tiny sword were well and truly striking the nascent soul. The cultivation art used by this yin-sifting sect master was clearly also a type of ancient devilish art. After the nascent soul was struck by the arc of golden lightning, an expression of agony appeared on its face, and it appeared to be on the brink of falling apart. Han Li's body swayed and he appeared in the air directly above the nascent soul. He then rubbed his hands together to produce another thick bolt of golden lightning amid an astonishing burst of rumbling. "Please wait, fellow Daoist, I have something to say," the nascent soul cried out as its face turned deathly pale. "I have no interest in hearing what you have to say." Han Li harumphed coldly as he raised a hand, following which the golden arc of lightning transformed into a massive golden python before crashing down from above. The yin-sifting sect master was absolutely horrified. However, even though its nascent soul had suffered severe wounds, it naturally wasn't going to give up without a fight. As such, spiritual light flashed from its body as it prepared to unleash some kind of secret technique as a final roll of the dice. However, right at this moment, a clump of azure threads suddenly appeared out of thin air several tens of feet beside it, catching it completely off guard and tightly binding its body. On the other side of the azure threads, azure light flashed as a tiny cauldron appeared. It was none other than the Heaven Void Cauldron. As soon as the yin-sifting sect master was bound by these azure threads, the magic power within its body congealed, and its heart immediately sank. The massive golden lightning python was unavoidable, and as the nascent soul looked on from down below, its horrified face paled even further. Just as it closed its eyes to await its inevitable death, a loud explosion suddenly erupted behind it while the nascent soul itself remained unscathed. It opened its eyes with a dumbstruck expression before its heart jolted with surprise. Han Li had appeared right before it and was inspecting it at close quarters. "You!" The yin-sifting sect master's heart stirred, and he was just about to say something when Han Li flicked several fingers through the air in an expressionless manner. Several streaks of silver light shot forth, all of which disappeared into the nascent soul's body. The yin-sifting sect master's nascent soul was completely powerless to resist, and before it could say anything else, it had fallen unconscious. Han Li flipped over his hand to produce several restriction talismans, which he plastered all over the nascent soul's body before pointing a finger toward the tiny cauldron. A crisp ringing sound immediately erupted from within the heaven-void cauldron as those azure threads were withdrawn, pulling the nascent soul into the cauldron. Han Li's expression finally eased after seeing this, and he turned his attention to the 5 devils and the 3 corpses. At this point, the 3 devils were still completely trapped by the glacial flames being expelled by the 5 ghostly heads. The 5 ghostly heads rushed into the sea of 5 colored flames at Han Li's behest before hurtling directly toward the 3 corpses, which were still moving as slowly as snails. Han Li smiled as he stowed away all of the treasures in the air, regardless of whether they were his or if they belonged to his enemy. He then waved a hand toward the humanoid puppet before carrying the tiny cauldron as he descended toward a secluded mountain down below. The humanoid puppet followed along behind him completely expressionlessly. Just as the 5 devils were dominating their 3 opponents, Han Li returned, this time without his heaven-void cauldron. He looked at the 3 corpses, which had almost been completely devoured by the 5 devils, and he waited for the conclusion of their battle in silence with a contemplative look on his face. "Have you really decided to infiltrate the yin-sifting sect alone?" The voice of a small child sounded. "It shouldn't be a very dangerous endeavor. After using my soul search technique on that nascent soul, I already know where the most powerful restrictions in the sect are situated. As long as I avoid those, nothing can touch me in the yin-sifting sect. There seem to only be 5 or 6 elders stationed in the sect while all of the others are out fighting enemies from other powers. This is a good opportunity for me to take care of all of the elders in the sect, then make a move against the elders outside of the sect. Even though I can't ascertain the exact location of the elders outside the sect from the information I derived using the soul search technique, I know roughly where they are, and I'll make sure that the remaining yin-sifting sect elders won't get a chance to join forces against me," Han Li replied in a calm manner. "If that's the case, then I have nothing to say. However, are you only trying to take their banners or do you intend to completely destroy the yin-sifting sect?" the small child asked. Han Li paused for a moment before replying with a cold smile. "It doesn't matter what my intentions are. They'll be losing 6 or 7 nascent soul stage elders on top of their late nascent soul stage sect master. Do you think they'll still be able to maintain their position as one of the 10 great Devil Dao sects? When that time comes, all of their enemies will destroy them in my stead. I won't need to dirty my hands at all." Chapter 1235. Thunderbombs and the Immortal Vanquishing Beads. What you're saying makes sense as well. Seeing as the yin-sifting sect is a prominent sect of the Devil Dao, they'll definitely have a lot of enemies. Otherwise, the yin-sifting sect master wouldn't have appeared here, the small child agreed with a smile. A faint smile also appeared on Han Li's face as he flipped over a hand to produce a black ball. He then fell silent as he began to scrutinize the ball. However, only a short while had passed before he abruptly patted his storage pouch to summon a wooden box. He blew toward the box, and the lid flew off of its own accord. The contents of the box comprised of a crimson ball, upon which was plastered several restriction talismans. This was none other than the treasure that Han Li had taken from the grey-robed monk by the name of Mo Ju from the profound jade cave of the North Night Palace. Han Li placed the black ball into the wooden box as well before carefully inspecting it. At first glance, the black ball was completely dull and lusterless, giving off a nondescript and mundane air. However, upon closer inspection, one would be able to discover that there were profound grayish-white runes visible on its surface. At the same time, Han Li was able to use his spiritual sense to peer deeper into the ball, where he discovered that there were miniature clouds of inky black mist situated within. All of these clouds were tumbling and surging erratically, and they seemed to be imbued with extremely fearsome and pure devilish qi. Only after a long while did Han Li withdraw his gaze from the black ball before turning his attention to the crimson ball again. After a brief assessment, he discovered that there was also extremely astonishing fire attribute spiritual power lurking within. He stroked his chin as a contemplative look appeared on his face. I didn't think that someone would have been capable of refining thunder bombs in the human world, even in ancient times. I wonder if the ancient cultivators figured out the refinement method for themselves, or if someone from the spirit realm bestowed the method upon them. If it's the former, then so be it, but if the latter is true, then that person most likely harbored some sinister intentions, the small child sighed. Han Li was a little surprised to hear this. Thunder bombs? They are from the spirit realm? But after using my soul search technique, it seems like that man was under the impression that they're known as immortal vanquishing beads. They seem to be extremely powerful, and even a deity transformation cultivator wouldn't be able to survive unscathed if they were to be struck by this bead. The shape is a little different from what I'm familiar to, but these are definitely thunder bombs. It's just that the two that you have are very crude, which suggests that they were probably rejects from the spirit realm. However, they're certainly worthy of the title of immortal vanquishing bead here in the human world, the small child replied. These are treasures used by cultivators in the spirit realm. Han Li asked with furrowed brows. Of course cultivators can use these things, but they were initially refined for mortals to use. They only spread to cultivator circles after that. This is one of the few powerful treasures that can be used by mortals in the spirit realm, even without any magic power. However, due to their immense power and the complex process required to refine them, very rarely will cultivators refine such items. There are also very few people who are aware of the refinement method. At the very least, that knowledge is beyond me, the small child explained. Even mortals can use it. Then why would spirit realm cultivators refine these things? Han Li was rather perplexed. It's hard to elaborate on the underlying reasons, but you'll be able to figure it out for yourself once you ascend to the spirit realm. The small child gave a rather ambiguous reply. Han Li wanted to pose further questions, but this was a matter regarding the spirit realm, so it naturally didn't have anything to do with him at the moment. As such, he closed the wooden box to stow the two balls away and set aside this topic of conversation for now. It was naturally a good thing that he had obtained a pair of such powerful treasures. Perhaps he'd have the opportunity to use them in the future. At this moment, the ghostly heads manifested from the unbroken Sanct Devils had crushed the three corpses to the ground in the distance. Even with mid-nascent soul stage power, the three corpses were powerless to resist given that their speed had been significantly hampered. As such, the five devils chomped down on their bodies, absorbing the pure corpse qi in their bodies with reckless abandon. Han Li knew that these three corpses would be completely devoured soon, so he began to consider how he was going to infiltrate the yin sifting sect. With his current abilities, as long as he could gather knowledge on the restrictions spread all over the yin sifting sect, he'd be able to infiltrate it with ease. Half a year later, the entire Great Jin was in an uproar. Within the short span of half a year, 7 or 8 nascent soul cultivators from the yin sifting sect, including the sectmaster, disappeared in quick succession. All of their soul lamps, which were located in a secret area within the sect, had also completely snuffed out, thereby indicating that they were clearly dead. What was even more bizarre was that more of those cultivators had perished within the yin sifting sect than outside of it. It was as if an invisible enemy had infiltrated the sect, and was specifically targeting their most powerful cultivators. Ever since the first elder was killed, the higher-ups of the yin sifting sect had conducted an exhaustive search within the sect and also activated all of the restrictions. However, all of their efforts yielded no fruits as more and more elders were killed one after another. All of the higher-ups of the yin sifting sect were horrified, and in the end, the elders had to live together in groups and never separate from one another. Only then were they able to remain safe. However, all of the yin sifting sect elders who were out running errands then began to die in quick succession. All of the remaining nascent soul cultivators in the yin sifting sect were absolutely petrified, and at a complete loss for what to do. In the short span of just half a year, the yin sifting sect had lost almost half of their nascent soul stage elders. It seemed that a nascent soul cultivator among their ranks died almost every, and that, in conjunction with the disappearance of their sect master, severely dented the yin sifting sect's power. All of the elders were immediately summoned back to the side and forced to reside together at all times. Only then did this nightmare subside. All of the horrified higher-ups of the yin-sifting sect finally heaved a long collective sigh of relief. However, despite the yin-sifting sect's best efforts to hide this incident, news of it was still inevitably leaked in the end. As such, all of the other major sects sprang into action, deploying large numbers of cultivators to take over the yin-sifting sect's territory. The remaining yin-sifting sect elders retaliated with all their might, but anyone could see that the yin-sifting sect wouldn't be able to last very long at all. After all, as one of the 10 major sects of the Devil Dao, the yin-sifting sect did have its glory days, but it had also made countless enemies. Now that it had shown severe signs of weakness and decline, there were naturally many people who were willing to contribute further to this trend. Thus, countless sects began to ravage the colossus that was the yin-sifting sect. High up in the air above a patch of barren land, there were a dozen or so cultivators gathered. They were standing in 2 groups with a clear boundary between them. However, at the center between the groups were 2 young men who were engaged in a heated battle. One of them was manipulating an azure flying sword while the other was using a red flying saber, and the clashes between the 2 weapons put on a spectacular light show amid bursts of resounding booms. All of the spectating cultivators wore excited expressions, and chatting among themselves in low, quiet voices. These people were all young men and women who appeared to be in their teens, and they were all at the chi condensation stage. There wasn't even a single Foundation establishment cultivator among them. From their identical attire, it could be seen that they were most likely low-grade disciples from a major family or a sect nearby. However, they were gathered here to battle for some reason. The azure flying sword and the red flying saber clashed over and over again. The azure sword seemed to have gained the upper hand, and the red saber was slowly being forced into retreat. Tiske, the azure spirit sword sure is quite powerful. It looks like Senior Marshal Brother Lin is going to win, a beautiful young woman said to the young man next to her with a smile on her face. HMPH, so what? If he wasn't from the Lin family, how could he possibly have a mid-grade spirit tool at just the chi condensation stage? He's got a major advantage from the silver spoon in his mouth. If I had a treasure like that, I definitely wouldn't lose to him. The young man was not very pleased, but he only spoke in an extremely quiet voice, as if he were afraid of being overheard. The young woman giggled upon hearing this. Even though she was only in her youth, there was already a hint of seductive charm about her. Before she had a chance to say anything else, the young man cast his gaze toward the distance in an errant manner before suddenly letting loose a cry of surprise. "What is it?" the young woman asked in a surprised voice before also turning her attention that direction, upon which an astonished look appeared on her face. There in the distance, a peculiar humanoid figure could be seen. The humanoid figure clearly had the appearance of a human male, but he had a massive pair of wings on his back. There were azure and white lightning flashing incessantly over the wings, but they were completely silent, thereby allowing him to avoid detection from all of the low-grade cultivators down below. If it weren't for the fact that the young man just so happened to have glanced toward that direction, the 2 of them would have been completely oblivious as well. The man had his hands clasped behind his back and continued onward without even sparing a glance at the low-grade cultivators down below. He seemed to be looking at something in the distance, but there appeared to be nothing in the sky aside from a few white clouds. What was that? Could that be a high-grade demon beast? The young woman was from a family of cultivators, so she had seen some relevant tomes, and was aware of the existence of metamorphosis stage demon beasts. No way. Our state of Hua is a little secluded, but there's no way that a high-grade demonic cultivator would dare to show themselves in such a blatant manner in broad daylight. It must be a senior with some kind of flight ability. Even though the young man was completely flabbergasted, he was able to make the correct judgment call in a short time. Strangely enough, even though the winged man in the sky was situated very far away from them, he seemed to have heard their conversation, and suddenly turned around to look at them. Their eyes met, and the heart rates of the pair of young cultivators accelerated drastically. It wasn't that the man's features were extremely terrifying or anything like that. In fact, his appearance was quite ordinary, to the extent that it was downright forgettable. However, what had struck fear into their hearts was that the man had a vertical inky black third eye on his glabella. That eye was completely wooden and emotionless, and chills ran down their spines at the mere sight of it.